The black-eyed children, otherwise known as the black-eyed kids, are often described as being between the ages of 8 and 12 years old. Most reports of these children indicate that they tend to appear mostly during dark hours to those who are unsuspecting and alone. Commonly, they are reported as arriving in groups of 2 and will ask their victim for some sort of favour that will give them access to the victim's home. During these encounters, they will tell their target that they need to call their parents to pick them up or that they need to use the restroom. Their speech is said to be simple, slow, and eerie, and during the encounter, the victim often reports being overwhelmed with a sudden feeling of dread. They will report realising that the eyes of these children are nothing but jet black emptiness and that their gaze is piercing when they finally raise their head. Author and one of the leading investigators on the subject, David Weatherly, asserts that the black-eyed children possess other unusual traits and behavioural patterns too. For instance, David states that many people at some point during their encounter realise that their skin tone is unusually pale or pasty and almost artificial looking. Their voice is said to be monotone, and the way in which they direct their requests is persistent and unusually demanding. The majority of victims who have encountered these children at their home report consistent and almost perfectly timed slow knocking at the door and persist until they are engaged by their target. Upon opening the door, David claims that the person will be greeted by usually 1, 2, or 3 of these children. He said that it is often reported that their heads remain lowered during the start of the initial interaction. Individuals report an unease in the air that creeps to full-blown fear, anxiety, and in some cases, panic attacks. This is normally caused by the discovery of their inky, cold black eyes. It has become common knowledge among those with an interest in the subject that Brian Bethel was the first to encounter a black-eyed child in 1996, but that may not be true. In fact, these sightings may have been occurring for thousands of years. If you haven't heard of Brian's account, then I will leave a link in the description below to my first video on the subject. And while I haven't personally read it, I will also leave a link to David's book on the subject. This is the Earther Man. Many sources seem to lead people to believe that the statue was initially found at the Göbekli Tepe, but this isn't true. The Earther Man was originally found accidentally during construction work in the area of the pre-pottery Neolithic site at Earther Yeni Mahal, located in Turkey. Not much is known about the Earther Man, except that it is the oldest known statue of a man being slightly larger than life-size. The statue's eyes were emphasised by segments of black obsidian sunk deep into the holes. Nobody knows who made it or why it was made, but there are those who believe that the sculptor may have documented something that he didn't understand. Psychologist Julian Jaynes suggests that the black eyes could symbolise the containment of the voices of those who have long since passed from this world, while psychologist David Lewis Williams suggests that the eyes were constructed as such to enhance their supernatural sight, or rather to suggest that they were to symbolise being able to see beyond human experience. Some archaeologists say that there is an unsettling feeling about the statue, though other than interpretations such as these, the Earther Man and its significance is not fully understood. Now, one of the earliest reports where David is certain that an individual experienced an encounter with a black-eyed child was in 1950, 40 years before the long-believed first encounter. Of course, at the time, the phrase black-eyed children was yet to be introduced, so it wasn't given a title, and it's not clear where in the US this took place. Harold, who was 16 years old at the time, was living with his parents in a rural area. On this particular evening, Harold was walking home from a friend's house and was making his way down a dirt track towards his house. Towards the end of this track was Harold's home, and as he was nearby his gate, he noticed a boy leaning against the fence. Harold said that the boy was younger than him and was no older than 13 or 14. While the exact location is unclear, Harold said that he lived in a small town where everyone knew each other, but he hadn't seen the boy before. Harold asked if he was okay or lost, but was completely ignored. The boy then asked if he could go inside Harold's house. He said, "I want to go to your house, take me to your house." Harold said that he felt a chill run down his spine and wasn't quite sure why he felt that way or how to respond to that request. Harold didn't say anything at this point, and the boy raised his head. Harold said that he was incredibly pale and his eyes were completely solid black. He then stated that he felt glued to the ground and wanted to run away but couldn't. The boy then told him not to run and that Harold should take him to his house. With that, Harold, who was completely engulfed in fear at this stage, made a beeline to his house. He said that while running, he heard loud screeching wails coming from behind him that reminded him of a bobcat. When he got to the door, he barged it open, which alerted his parents, who came to him. They asked him what was wrong and he told them what had just occurred. The father went outside but couldn't locate the boy. When he came back to the house and told them that no one was there, the mother believed that her son had come in contact with some sort of demon. Harold, on the other hand, didn't know what he had experienced that evening, but agreed to his parents' demands that he should go to the local clergy to be blessed. I'm not sure that Harold believed that it was a demon, but he said that he was left with more questions than answers. So who or what are the black-eyed children? While the two may not be related, many who hold an interest in the subject point to the curse of the evil eye. According to Vice.com, belief in the curse dates back at least 5,000 years to the Sumerians of the Euphrates Valley, though historians have found cave drawings up to 10,000 years old in Spain and amulets from 3,300 BC in Syria. They believe that these amulets were used to ward off the evil eye. Like all traditions, belief in the evil eye and what it entails differs from region to region, but its existence in cultures across oceans, religions, and millennia is remarkable. Today, belief in the curse exists in nearly every continent, and evil eye charms can be found everywhere from street vendors in Greece to department stores like Bloomingdale's. This ancient curse dictates that once afflicted, one will experience misfortune, bad luck, injury, or all of the above. These are things that those who encounter a black-eyed child and grant them their request report experiencing. There are believed to be 3 types of the curse. The first is the unconscious evil eyes, which harm people without the intention to do so. The second type intends to harm, and the third is the most malevolent. The third type is unseen, a hidden evil which is said to be the most dangerous. It's unclear precisely how and why this fear of the eyes originated. Some state that it signifies the danger of people who have menacing eyes, while others believe that the curse is brought upon someone by seeing the eyes of something unknown. Interestingly, Pope Pius IX was believed to possess the evil eyes. On the 5th of October 1891, the Chicago Tribune reported this: "The passing of the late Prince Barberini was popularly attributed in Rome to the effect of the evil eye of Pope Pius IX. Strange though it may appear, the spell of his evil eye is believed to continue even to this day, 15 years after his passing. Every year, a memorial service is celebrated in his honour by successor Leo XIII in the Sistine Chapel. It is a magnificent ceremony, and it is attended by all the diplomatic corps and principal dignitaries of the papal court. But on each occasion, one of the leading Roman nobles who have been present have passed away a few days afterwards. The last passing of this kind was that of Prince Barberini, and under the circumstances, it's hardly surprising that the Roman aristocracy are beginning to show a decided reluctance to attend the annual services in memory of Pius IX. The gallery reserved for their use in the Sistine Chapel has been almost empty on the last 3 occasions. David Weatherly's personal belief on the matter is that they are interdimensional in nature. He believes that they come in from another level of existence and are able to manifest themselves in our reality. David continues and states that he believes that they wield the ability to travel through portals which allow them access here. He states that while their primary goal seems to be enter the home or personal space of its victim, it's symbolic of gaining permission to enter into their lives. The secondary objective, David states, is to cause fear. He said that fear is energy and that these entities seem to be harnessing it in some way or another. And finally, similarly to the evil eye curse, David and many others believe that their presence to be an omen of bad things to come for its victim. As mentioned, many who have accepted their request report awful things happening to them thereafter. It's important to clarify here that those are just David's personal beliefs on the matter, and needless to say, are still obviously within the realm of speculation. Now, there was one interesting incident involving a police officer that David shared during an interview. Unfortunately, I could not find the location where this took place. At approximately 3 AM, the emergency services received a call in regards to a domestic disturbance. From what I can understand, neighbours heard shouting and banging coming from a nearby home. Law enforcement were able to arrive in good time. Unfortunately, it was just a heated argument a couple were engaged in that had concluded by the time the officers arrived. The two officers then stuck around for a while and patrolled the area, and at roughly 3:30 AM, they saw two hooded individuals that they estimated to be between 13 and 15 years old. The kids, or teens, were leaning against a fence next to a home belonging to an elderly woman living alone. The officers approached the pair and tried to strike a conversation with them and asked what was wrong and why they were out there. It appears as though the officers originally suspected that the pair were being neglected and may have been locked out given their posture and lack of responses. After a while, one of the boys said that the homeowners wouldn't let them in. David then stated that the officers knocked on the door, but it looks like the woman was asleep. They knocked harder and she eventually came down the stairs and opened the door. The police asked her about the boys on her property, and the lady was said to be confused and didn't know what the officers were talking about. The officers were said to have turned around to find that the boys had disappeared. According to David, after this, they searched the area but never found the boys and weren't sure how they managed to get away. Not long afterwards, David received another report from a Texan man in his 40s. The Texan was a former soldier in the US military with family living all over Texas. On this particular day, he had been visiting family somewhere in eastern Texas, and during the night had planned to stay with other family members in western Texas. Once the first visit was reaching its natural end, he loaded himself up with a couple of thermal flasks of hot coffee, got in his truck and began driving west. The light was quickly fading during this trip, and not long after setting off, the area was pitch black with the truck's headlights being the only source of light. It's important to note that the route in which the driver took was very remote for long stretches, with basically no civilization anywhere for miles and miles in all directions. At some point during the drive, the man needed to relieve himself and stopped the truck. He got out and headed to the edge of the dirt track he'd been driving on. Upon finishing, he walked back to his vehicle and noticed that there was a hooded child with his head face down, standing outside the driver's door. The former soldier was taken aback and startled by this, and at first didn't say anything. The boy said that he wanted to get into the man's truck. The Texan said that he replied in a joking manner and told the boy that he had startled him, and then asked what was wrong. The boy simply replied with, "Just let me in your truck and we can go for a ride." The man reported that he immediately felt flooded with fear and anxiety, but didn't consider just how strange this encounter was in the moment. He said that he was in the middle of nowhere and that there were no houses or people around, and yet this boy was by himself. He questioned the boy and asked if he needed to drive him home. The boy replied, "Just open the door and ask me to get in." The man said that he was completely overwhelmed with a sudden feeling of dread, and every bone in his body was telling him that there was something wrong about this. The guy didn't reply and got back into his vehicle and closed the door. He said that this was the first time that the boy had looked up and gave him eye contact, and he said that it was like looking into a pitch black void. He said that the boy's eyes were completely coal black, and that the boy didn't want to take his eyes off him as he drove away. As he was driving away, he said that he thought that he must have just been silly and overreacted, and then realised that he just left a helpless child in the middle of nowhere. So the man stopped his truck and turned around and drove back to the location of the boy to check on him. However, when he arrived, he said that the boy had gone. He tried to call out for him, but he never received a reply. He also conducted a search of the immediate area, but couldn't find him. After being completely creeped out again for the second time, he drove off in the direction of his family, but didn't tell them of his experience that night. He said that he felt embarrassed, that he had been scared by a child, and that he may have left someone in the middle of nowhere, but reaffirmed that he believed that something was completely off about that situation. These incidents are not isolated to the United States. In 1974, two men known as Elaine and Patrick reported experiencing something that they both believed to be completely out of the ordinary. The two men had been friends for a very long time and both lived in the Picardy region of Ain, located in France. On this particular day, they had planned to spend the day in a nearby small village and took a different route than normal to get there. On their way out, Patrick noticed something that he found odd near the last house in their home village. He said that there were 5 small figures in the courtyard of the home. He continued and stated that 3 of them were unusually huddled together in the background with their heads directed towards the floor. He said that another was stood near the front door of the home, tracing its hand along the wall. The final figure, he said, turned to face them and Elaine rolled down his window to get a better view. David said, and I quote, "Elaine reported that he went completely cold when he saw the person. The appearance of the 5 characters was so strange, as was their behaviour. They were all just over 4 feet tall. They were dressed alike with long garments that almost reached the ground. These garments were decorated with multicoloured spots. The beings themselves had earthy yellow skin and long hair that fell down their backs and to their waist. Their noses were compressed inwards and their eyes were described as enormous, solid black hemispheres the size of billiard balls. The one nearest, who was facing the car, started motioning the pair to come closer. However, Elaine shouted at Patrick to drive away. He said that he was completely engulfed in fear and said that there was a terrifying aura emanating from the group. The men reported this sighting to others in the village, and one neighbour also said that he had noticed the group but thought that they were just a group of children. It's not entirely clear what took place that day, but David firmly believes that the men had experienced an encounter with the black-eyed children. Now, many people pose the question, what happens when an individual grants the request of the black-eyed children and lets them in? David said that he has come across many people who have reported making that very mistake of granting them entry. While David often found it difficult to follow up, he said that he did manage to investigate a number of them who all reported similar outcomes. David managed to interview the entire family who claimed to have fallen victim to one such encounter. The family wished to remain anonymous, and the family unit in this instance consisted of a young married couple with their 10-year-old son. The family lived in a rural area, and the woman was driving home from work and had picked up her son. On this day, she took her son to the local supermarket and left him in the car while she went into the store. She said that she was inside for between 5 and 10 minutes, and upon leaving the store from a distance, she could see that someone else was inside the car and next to her son. Obviously panicking, she ran over to the car and realised that a child that she determined to be slightly older than her son was sitting in the car. Her son was not panicking and didn't seem worried and was sat quietly waiting for her. The boy's head was face down this entire time, which the mother found worrisome. She got her son out of the car and asked the boy what he was doing and if he needed something. The boy didn't reply, and she asked him why he was in the car, and he told her that her son had invited him in. At this point, the woman said that the boy made eye contact with her, and that's when she noticed the deep, pitch-black eyes glaring back at her. The woman reported feeling completely terrified and took her son by the hand and ran back to the store. There, she told an employee that someone was in her car and a member of security escorted her back to the vehicle, but it was empty. The woman didn't specifically tell security what had happened and didn't explain that it was a child and didn't mention anything about the eyes. She called her husband, sobbing and obviously scared, but wouldn't tell him what had happened, only that he needed to go to the store. The husband agreed, but told her that she needed to tell him what had happened when they got home. While waiting, the mother asked her son who the boy was, and he replied that he didn't know him, but the boy asked if he could come inside. The son said that he thought that they would play together once they got back to the house. Shortly afterwards, the husband arrived and the woman was adamant that she couldn't drive her car and got in his truck with their son and told him that she would explain once they got home. The husband said that was fine and he drove the car. However, during the drive, the husband got into an accident and the car was completely written off. Fortunately, the father was swiftly taken to the hospital and received treatment, and other than some minor injuries, only suffered from a mild concussion. He said that the last thing he remembered before crashing was a foul smell that he couldn't identify in the car. The mother told him what had happened at the store, and she blamed the smell and what took place thereafter on what she believed to be some sort of unnatural meeting with whatever the entity was. Not long afterwards, the son kept becoming ill and the doctors could not figure out what was wrong as the symptoms seemed to change over time and they couldn't come up with a solid diagnosis. In the first instance, they believed that the boy had measles, which they were able to confirm wasn't the case. After intense cramps, they then believed he was suffering from appendicitis and then the flu, but none of the treatment seemed to be working. The mother didn't speak of what took place at the store, fearing that she would be branded as crazy, and instead told her close family and friends who performed a prayer circle around the child. She said that she was unsure if it worked as the illness persisted for some time before finally dissipating. So, what do you think? What do you make of David's beliefs and the accounts he has documented? Do you think that the black-eyed children are just a story, or is there something more to it? Do share. And please do leave a like if you liked the video, or a dislike if you didn't. Feel free to share your honest opinion, I'd like to hear your thoughts. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank all of you that have subscribed to the channel and who share these videos. I appreciate it a lot and I can't thank you enough. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to my patrons. Your support is crucial and it's massively appreciated, so thank you very much to those who have signed up. Anyway, do let me know what you thought of this one and you'll find all of the links and sources in the description below. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, it helps me a lot. I hope that you have a great day, or evening depending on where you are. Be safe guys, and I'll catch you soon.